Emily's life was shattered before she even turned 15, trapped in a nightmare no one could imagine, forced to survive the unimaginable while hiding the darkest secrets within her own home. Emily's life began like that of any ordinary teenage girl. She went to school, completed her homework, and spent weekends with friends, laughing and dreaming about the future. Her home, a tidy suburban house with a small garden, seemed like the perfect environment for a teenager to grow up in. But appearances were deceiving. Behind closed doors, Emily's reality was far darker than anyone could imagine. At 15, she faced a horror that no child should ever endure. The person she should have trusted the most, her father, became the source of unimaginable fear and violation. The very man who had once cared for her, who had nurtured her childhood, had turned into the predator who would destroy her sense of safety and innocence. The first pregnancy came quietly, almost invisibly. Emily's body changed before anyone could understand why, yet no one noticed the truth hiding in plain sight. She withdrew from friends, lost interest in school activities, and spent long hours alone in her room. Teachers assumed she was struggling with adolescence, neighbors whispered about her unusual quietness, and her mother, busy with work and social life, failed to see the warning signs. Emily felt completely alone, trapped in a life she did not choose, hiding a secret too painful to share. The birth of her first child marked the beginning of a nightmare that would stretch across years, each day heavier than the last. She learned quickly how to move silently through her own house, how to hide the evidence of her pregnancies, and how to mask the pain that weighed on her spirit. Every morning, she pretended to be a normal teenager, attending school, nodding politely to teachers, and smiling at classmates. Every night, she returned to a home filled with fear, control, and manipulation, where the person responsible for her suffering monitored every movement. Emily's life became a delicate balance between survival and concealment. Even in the midst of despair, a flicker of resistance existed. Deep inside, she knew she had to protect herself, even if the world outside could not see her suffering. Each secret, each whispered cry into the darkness of her room, became a small act of defiance. She began to internalize the role of a survivor, navigating a world that had become dangerous and unpredictable, yet learning, day by day, how to endure. The first step of her long and painful journey had begun, and the path ahead promised both terror and eventually, a faint glimmer of hope. By 16, Emily's world had shrunk to the size of her home, a place that should have been safe but had become a prison. The cycle of abuse and fear had tightened around her like a noose. Each new pregnancy deepened her trauma and made her feel more trapped. Her father's control was total. He isolated her from friends, closely monitored her every movement, and left no room for resistance. Emily quickly learned that any attempt to seek help or question him could bring punishment or worse. Her days were filled with careful routines designed to avoid detection. She memorized when her father would leave the house, which neighbors might notice unusual activity, and how to hide evidence of the children she had already born. Each birth became a secret she carried alone, a burden that weighed heavily on her young body and spirit. Emily's mother remained unaware, distracted by her own life, and the world outside continued without interruption, blind to the horrors inside the house. Despite the fear, Emily found small ways to assert control over her life. She learned to anticipate dangers and protect the children she had brought into the world. Feeding, bathing, and comforting them became her act of quiet defiance. In the midst of unimaginable trauma, she nurtured the only lives she could truly safeguard. Each child was a reminder of both her suffering and her strength, a fragile lifeline in an otherwise broken existence. Emily's school life became a mask. Teachers noticed her decline in participation and her withdrawn demeanor, but no one suspected the truth. Classmates whispered about her odd behavior, but she kept the darkest parts of her life hidden. Every day, she carried a dual reality, a public facade of normalcy and a private life defined by fear, control, and secrecy. Even as she endured abuse, a spark of survival persisted within her. Emily realized that she could not remain entirely powerless. She began quietly planning, observing, and noting inconsistencies in her father's behavior. Though she was only 16, she understood that knowledge and vigilance were her tools. Each hidden moment of awareness, each secret she kept, built a foundation for the day she might finally reclaim her life. The years ahead would be filled with danger, uncertainty, and the unimaginable challenge of exposing a truth that no one wanted to face. But Emily's resilience was growing stronger with every day that passed. At 17, Emily's carefully hidden world began to show cracks. For years, she had moved silently, protecting herself and her children, living in a house filled with fear and secrecy. But the meticulous routine she had built to survive could no longer hide the consequences of her father's actions. The children, growing older, began to show signs of neglect and inconsistency that could not be concealed. Emily's fear of discovery was constant, yet a quiet determination started to surface. She realized that she could no longer rely entirely on secrecy. Small details that once went unnoticed now attracted attention. Teachers remarked on the children's irregular attendance and health checkups. Neighbors questioned the sudden absence of children during community events, and subtle anomalies in Emily's behavior were slowly being pieced together. Emily understood that her father's control, once absolute, was beginning to falter. Even the most careful predator leaves traces, and those traces were starting to show. In the shadows of fear, Emily found moments of courage. She began documenting the abuse secretly, noting dates, events, and evidence that could support her story if the opportunity arose. Each detail was a lifeline, a preparation for the day she might finally confront the truth and escape. Emily knew the stakes were high. If her father discovered her efforts, the consequences could be devastating. Yet, the need to protect herself and the children outweighed her fear. Emily's father, sensing the fragility of his control, grew more unpredictable and erratic. Small missteps and careless words hinted at a man losing his grip on a web of lies he had spent years carefully constructing. The home, once a place of silent terror, became charged with tension. Every movement had to be calculated, every sound measured, as Emily navigated the dangerous balance between submission and defiance. In the midst of the chaos, Emily's resolve strengthened. She began to envision a future where she and her children could exist outside the walls of fear. Each day became a careful step toward survival and eventual liberation. The plan was fragile, and danger lurked in every corner, but Emily understood that the first cracks in the facade were signs of hope. The world outside her home, once indifferent and unaware, was beginning to notice the impossible reality she had been forced to endure, and the moment of reckoning was drawing nearer. The walls that had protected her father's secrets for years finally began to crumble. Authorities arrived after a combination of anonymous tips, suspicious medical records, and persistent concern from those who had begun to notice irregularities in the children's lives. When they entered the house, the reality was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Hidden in plain sight were 4 children, all born from Emily's father, living in conditions that were both secretive and precarious. The community, which had long admired the man as a father and neighbor, was forced to confront a reality they had refused to see for years. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town. People could not reconcile the image of the respectable man they knew with the horrors that emerged from his home. Emily, for the first time in years, felt a mixture of fear and relief. The danger was still present, but her secret had been exposed, and the path toward justice was finally opening. The children, though frightened and confused, were removed from the house and placed into protective care. They would no longer be pawns in a cycle of abuse that had begun when Emily was only 15. Emily's father, realizing that his lies and manipulation had failed, became increasingly erratic. Investigators uncovered evidence of coercion, intimidation, and manipulation designed to prevent anyone from noticing the abuse. The meticulous image he had presented to the outside world of a devoted father, a respected community member, was shattered. Every lie, every act of deception, was exposed under the relentless scrutiny of law enforcement. In the days that followed, Emily began the slow and painful process of reclaiming her life. The trauma that had defined her existence for years could not be erased, but the first steps toward freedom had been taken. Counseling, medical care, and legal protection became her new reality. She realized that surviving the abuse was only part of the battle. Learning to trust, to navigate the world safely, and to protect her children from further harm would be the long journey ahead. The case drew attention far beyond the town. Journalists, social workers, and advocates for abuse survivors took notice. Emily's story became both a warning and a testament to resilience. The walls that had confined her physically and emotionally had been broken, but the path forward remained challenging. Every decision, every interaction, would test her strength, courage, and determination to ensure that the horrors of her past would not dictate the future for herself or her children. Years after the discovery, Emily's life began to transform. The immediate danger of her father's control was gone, but the wounds he left behind ran deep. The process of healing was slow, painful, and filled with uncertainty. Therapy became a lifeline, helping her navigate the trauma that had defined so much of her adolescence. Every session revealed memories she had long buried, emotions she had long suppressed, and fears she had lived with in silence. Yet, for the first time, Emily felt a sense of agency, a belief that she could shape her own life rather than merely survive it. Her children, now old enough to understand fragments of their history, were placed into stable foster care. They were safe from the abuse that had shaped their beginnings, yet their presence in Emily's life remained a constant reminder of both pain and resilience. Each child's laughter, curiosity, and small victories were evidence of the strength that had carried them through a dark and hidden world. Emily committed herself to nurturing these fragile bonds, determined to ensure that love and stability would replace the fear that had once consumed them. The trial of her father became a national spectacle. Details of his manipulation, abuse, and long-term deception shocked even those familiar with true crime. Experts testified to the psychological control he had exerted, the coercion that silenced Emily, and the deliberate measures he had taken to isolate the family from detection. Yet, amidst the horror, Emily's courage and testimony became central to the pursuit of justice. Her ability to document, remember, and face the truth gave prosecutors the evidence needed to hold him accountable for his crimes. Beyond the courtroom, Emily's story began to inspire others. She spoke publicly about her experiences, sharing insights into survival, abuse, and the importance of breaking the silence. Advocacy became a way to reclaim power from a past that had sought to destroy her. Survivors reached out, finding hope in her courage, and communities began to implement stronger protections for vulnerable children. Emily's trauma became a force for awareness and prevention, transforming suffering into purpose. While the scars of her past would never fully disappear, Emily's life became a testament to resilience and endurance. From the darkness of fear and abuse, she emerged as a survivor and a protector, determined to prevent others from experiencing the horrors she endured. Her story was a chilling reminder that evil can hide in familiar places, but it also proved that courage, even in the smallest moments, can illuminate a path to freedom, justice, and hope.